I was the only daughter-in-law in my in-laws' house. Before marriage, I had heard that in-laws are very strict, and a girl has to do a lot of work there. Everyone has their own temperament, and it's difficult to adjust to everyone's nature. I was scared and anxious about marriage, as I had so many fears. When I entered my in-laws' house, all my fears were proven wrong. My mother-in-law was very kind and took great care of me. Every night, she would give me a special herbal medicine mixed with milk and personally feed it to me. Then, after making sure I had taken it, she would leave the room. She said it was good for my health, would strengthen me, and help me feel healthy. Hearing this, I used to smile. My husband was also very good. I had no complaints about him. He was very caring towards his parents as well. After coming home, he would first visit his mother's room and spend hours there, and I never objected because there was nothing wrong with that. I was not a traditional daughter-in-law who would fight if my husband looked after his mother. One day, I overheard a woman from our neighborhood talking to my mother-in-law about the herbal medicine. She asked, "Did you start giving this medicine to your daughter-in-law on the first day? Don't let it become a problem later." My mother-in-law replied, "Of course I can't forget this. How can I not ensure that my son's family continues?" Hearing this, I felt embarrassed. I realized that my mother-in-law gave me that medicine with the hope that it would help me conceive. By now, 6 months had passed since my marriage, but there was still no good news. The women in the neighborhood kept asking my mother-in-law if she had done anything about it. My mother-in-law would make excuses and take me away to avoid their questioning. Then one day I found out that my mother-in-law was expecting a child herself. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that, at her age, she was having a baby. My father-in-law seemed unaffected, as though it was a normal thing, and my mother-in-law looked happy, like she was having a baby for the first time. I wondered how my husband would react when he found out. I imagined he would be too embarrassed to speak about it openly. I was still thinking about this when in the evening my husband came home. I wanted to talk to him about his mother, but when I tried to bring it up, he surprised me by saying, "You must take extra care of my mother now. Don't let her do any household chores. Make sure I don't hear any complaints about you." I was shocked. Why was he saying this so casually? Didn't he feel embarrassed about his mother's pregnancy at this age? Didn't he care what people would say? The next day, I saw a few of my mother-in-law's friends, who were of the same age as her, also pregnant. There seemed to be no hesitation in their conversations. Despite all this, my mother-in-law continued to give me that strange herbal medicine every day. When I asked my husband about it, he looked at me thoughtfully and said, "Didn't you know about this medicine?" "I don't know much about it. Ask your mother-in-law. She knows better." But whenever I asked my mother-in-law about it, she would give vague answers. The medicine had a strange smell, and whenever I took it, I had to pinch my nose because the odor gave me a headache. I was really troubled. It seemed that my mother-in-law and her friends were all expecting, and there was no shame in their conversations. I felt overwhelmed by the situation. It had been a long time since I had visited my parents' home. One day I asked my mother-in-law for permission to visit, but at first she hesitated. After a while she agreed, saying, "Okay, you can go visit them, but don't stay more than 2 days. You know I can't manage the household chores on my own in this condition." She said this a bit shyly, and I was surprised by her tone, but I didn't say anything. I knew if I questioned her, she might get upset and tell my husband. When I reached my parents' house, I told my sister-in-law about what my mother-in-law had said, and she was equally shocked. She said, "If this had happened with any woman here, she would be too embarrassed to go out. But your mother-in-law doesn't care, and neither does your husband. Aren't they ashamed?" That evening, when I went to my sister-in-law's room, I was startled to see her holding a herb that smelled exactly like the medicine my mother-in-law had been giving me. I was curious, so I asked her what the herb was for. What she told me left me speechless. My sister-in-law explained, "I was only 18 when my parents passed away one after the other. I had to take care of my brother and his wife. My sister-in-law was very kind and took care of me, but my brother became obsessed with the idea that I needed to get married quickly. Otherwise, something bad might happen. I was too young and didn't want to think about marriage. I told my sister-in-law discreetly that I wasn't ready, but my brother wouldn't listen. He even asked a matchmaker to find a suitable proposal for me. Despite my protest, proposals started coming in. One day, my sister-in-law told me that she had found a match for me in Gilgit. When I heard this, I was stunned. I said, How can I go so far? I won't even be able to visit often. My sister-in-law responded, after marriage, girls rarely visit their parents. My own parents live close by, but I don't visit them often either. I stayed quiet after that, and within a year I was married and had to move to my in-laws' house. The environment there was very different from my own home, but slowly all the fears I had began to fade. I had heard a lot about mother-in-laws and sisters-in-law from my friends, but I didn't face any such issues. Although I was worried that my brother hadn't investigated properly before arranging my marriage, I was relieved that my in-laws were very good people. I had no complaints from my mother-in-law, and she never tried to turn my husband against me. I was actually surprised that after so long, my mother-in-law had never mentioned wanting grandchildren. I was happy that she took great care of my health, making sure to give me milk with medicine every day. Then, when I saw the same herb in my sister-in-law's hand, I took it from her and looked closely at it. The smell was exactly the same as the medicine my mother-in-law had been giving me. My sister-in-law said, "We don't want children yet, and this herb is used for that purpose." Hearing this, I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. My sister-in-law noticed my shocked expression and asked if something was wrong, but I just brushed it off. I didn't know how to explain my thoughts. I had always thought my mother-in-law was kind, but now I realized she had been giving me this medicine to prevent me from becoming pregnant. I couldn't understand why she was doing this to me. How could a mother do this to her son's wife? If her son had a child, she should have been the happiest person. But for some reason, she was treating me this way. I decided in my heart that I wouldn't take the medicine anymore. I thought about telling my husband everything, but then I remembered how emotionally attached he was to his mother. He couldn't hear a word against her. I quickly pushed the thought away. I had no proof, and I didn't know if my husband would even believe me. What if he blamed me and threw me out of the house? Where would I go? I stayed silent, thinking about all this. After 2 days, my husband came to pick me up. When I returned home, my mother-in-law eagerly hugged me and said, "The house has been so lonely without you. I missed you so much. Yesterday I was telling your husband to go and bring you back." Her words made me feel a bit irritated, but I forced a smile on my face. I didn't want to upset her. Once inside, my husband also seemed overly excited, as if I had been gone for years, not days. That night, my mother-in-law brought me the milk and medicine again. I told her, "You're not feeling well. You should rest. I'll take the medicine myself." She hesitated for a moment and said, "Don't neglect it. Make sure you take it." I reassured her that I wouldn't skip it. If I hadn't discovered the truth, I would have been grateful to my mother-in-law for taking such good care of me. But now, knowing everything, I felt angry. What did she think she was doing? Why was she deceiving me? That night, I threw the medicine in the trash and drank the milk. From then on, every day, I would throw the medicine away and just drink the milk. A month later, I started feeling strange, dizzy and unwell. When I went to the doctor, I found out I was going to be a mother. I could hardly believe it when I heard the news. When I got home and shared the happy news with my mother-in-law, she was stunned, staring at me in disbelief. Later, I told my husband, and he was equally shocked. He asked, "How is this possible?" I was taken aback. Why wouldn't it be possible for me to become a mother? He went silent for a moment and then asked cautiously, "Did your mother give you the medicine?" His question left me speechless. It meant that my husband already knew about the medicine my mother-in-law had been giving me. I thought that once I told him, he would be upset with his mother. But it turned out he had known all along. Did this mean he was also involved in this? But why was this happening? How could this be? After marriage, every man wishes for children, yet my husband seemed to have no desire for a child. Instead, he was worried that his wife was going to become a mother. He had been unusually distant lately. My mother-in-law had also started to avoid me. I couldn't understand why they were acting this way. If it were any other man, he would have been overjoyed at the news of his wife expecting a child, but my husband didn't seem to care at all. Soon, my mother-in-law gave birth to a baby boy, and my husband was the happiest. He kept his little brother with him all the time, loving him endlessly. I would watch him with his brother, calling him my son, and showering him with affection, while my mother-in-law seemed overjoyed with her newborn. I couldn't understand how he could show so much love for his brother, yet have no interest in his own unborn child. What was going on? One day, my husband went into my mother-in-law's room after returning home. I waited for hours for him to come out, but he didn't. So I went to check on him, and when I overheard their conversation, I froze in shock. Inside, I could hear my mother-in-law's voice saying, "You should give her this medicine, so she'll get rid of this problem." My husband replied, "Make sure nothing goes wrong. Just tell them she fell down the stairs or ate something hot. Don't worry, I'll make sure nothing goes wrong." My heart sank. What were they planning to make me take? I felt chills all over my body. It didn't feel safe to stay in that house anymore, but I had nowhere else to go. Just then, my husband entered the room with a glass of milk for me. Now I understood that he had mixed something harmful in it. I refused to drink it, but he got angry and forced me to drink it. As soon as I drank the milk, I started feeling severe pain in my stomach. The pain became unbearable, and my husband called the midwife. Because of my husband's actions, I lost my baby, just a few months into the pregnancy. I couldn't believe that my husband had done this to me. I broke down in tears. My brother and sister-in-law came to see me, and I couldn't hold it in any longer. I told them everything. They were shocked and speechless, but they didn't reveal anything to anyone. My sister-in-law suggested that she take me to her place for a few days. My husband protested, but I insisted that I needed to leave. I couldn't stay there anymore. Everyone fell silent, and eventually I went with her. After a few days, my sister-in-law asked me for details, and I told her everything. She was equally shocked. "How could your husband do this? Doesn't he want children?" she asked. I didn't know the answer either. I couldn't understand why my husband was behaving this way. A few days later, my husband began to come to my parents' house to take me back, but I didn't want to go with him. I had started to feel disgust for him because he had killed my child, and I didn't even want to look at him anymore. I was surprised by my brother and sister-in-law too. Even though they knew the truth, they didn't confront him or stop me. I was so hurt that they didn't do anything. Eventually, I returned to my in-laws' house with a heavy heart. I cried a lot. If my parents were still alive, they would never have allowed me to return to that man's doorstep. He was the killer of my child. It's true what they say, brothers only remain brothers while parents are alive. My heart was broken as I returned to my in-laws' house, where neither my mother-in-law nor my husband seemed to care for me anymore. But I had no other choice. I had no place to go, so I stayed there. Once I was feeling a little better, my mother-in-law started giving me the medicine again. Now I knew for sure that they would never let me have children. But why was this happening? I was desperate to know the reason, and today when my mother-in-law brought me that medicine again, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I confronted my husband and demanded the truth. I told him I knew everything. He had to tell me the reason. What he said left me completely shaken. He told me that in our tradition, when a new daughter-in-law enters the house, she is not allowed to have children for the first 5 years. Instead, the older woman of the household, usually the mother-in-law or anyone in a similar role, bears children for the man. The reason for this is that if a woman has children early in the marriage, she starts to become dominant and eventually gains control over the man. She no longer remains under his authority, so for the first 5 years, no children are allowed from the new wife. He went on to explain that he had fulfilled his desire for children through his mother. Hearing this from my husband was like the ground slipping away from beneath my feet. How could this be possible? What kind of world were they living in? Did my husband and his mother not realize the sanctity of their relationship? What they were practicing was so far removed from decency and religion. My husband continued saying that, according to our tribe's customs, I could not have children until I had spent 5 years in the family. I was utterly speechless. How could they be so disconnected from the principles of goodness and right and wrong? They had no respect for the sanctity of relationships, not even the most sacred ones. I could not live for a second longer in this environment filled with ignorance and darkness. The very next day, I left and returned to my parents' house. My brother and sister-in-law tried hard to convince me to go back, but I refused. I told them clearly that I could not live in such a barbaric and ignorant environment. My husband came several times to try to convince me to come back, but I had already made up my mind that I could not stay with him. Despite my brother's objections, I filed for divorce. It wasn't an easy decision for me. I faced countless remarks from family members and neighbors, but I was resolute in my decision. I couldn't stay even a minute longer in that suffocating atmosphere. When the divorce papers came into my hands, I cried bitterly. But deep inside, I was at peace, knowing that I had escaped a life of oppression. My brother realized his mistake and said that he should have investigated the marriage thoroughly before allowing it. He promised that in the future, he would make sure to make decisions for my life more carefully. I lowered my head in sorrow at his words. But after going through the experience of marriage, I had learned so much about people. I could now recognize a lot more than I used to. What saddened me the most was that in today's world, people still live such ignorant lives with no knowledge of right and wrong. They place their customs and traditions above everything else.